Apetawashte. Good morning, my relatives. My name is Quanah Parker Brightman. I'm Executive Director of United Native Americans. And I come here today to bring voice to the voiceless as far as the indigenous population whose land you currently occupy. Now, here in the state of California, we have over 50,000 wells in the state that have been drilled. Now, the average well averages about 140,000 gallons of water per well used to frack, not to mention the earthquake effects that are caused near fault lines. California Indian senior water rights should be enforced. And of course, the enforcement of the Clean Water Act in the state of California, which California is currently in violation of at this point. We need to save all of our remaining groundwater for the people of California and for our local farmers during this historic drought, and to stop the use of these 300 chemicals of toxic wastewater used to grow our food. We need to ban fracking now in order to save our planet, our Mother Earth. Over 7 million people die every year from climate change due to poor air quality. Over 110 million crops die from climate change each year. 4 million people die every year from whom reside near refineries, fracking wells, and crude oil drilling wells. And I'd like to also ask for an aye vote for SB 788. Thank you very much. Oh.
Which one's that?
Good morning, committee members. My name is Holland Kretzman. I'm here on behalf of the Center for Biological Diversity and its 100,000 active supporters in California. For years, the public has called for a halt to fracking and other dangerous oil and gas activities in California because the damage is too great. Our water has been contaminated, our air has been polluted, and children are getting sick near active wells. In 2013, we were told that protections for Californians would have to wait until a scientific study was completed. In the meantime, fracking continued, and Dogger released a woefully deficient environmental impact report that did not incorporate this scientific review. But now the science is in, and the report confirms the need to ban fracking and drastically improve protections from other dangerous oil and gas activity. In fact, the study demonstrates in particular why fracking is so dangerous in California. And the science panel has offered several recommendations to address the most serious and imminent harms. In California, most fracking takes place at shallow depths, often right next to groundwater. The pollution risk is so great that the report calls for an end to shallow fracking near groundwater unless it can be proven safe. The study emphasized that all wells, not just fracked wells, present a risk to surrounding communities. Yet today, millions of Californians live, work, and go to school within breathing distance of toxic air pollutants emitted from active oil wells. The study recommends a science-based setback that would keep communities safe from all wells. California also inexplicably allows oil companies to dump toxic wastewater into open pits, where chemicals percolate into our soil and groundwater and evaporate into the air around it. This contaminates our groundwater during one of the worst droughts in recorded history and is simply unacceptable. That's why the science panel urges us to end this ridiculous practice. Finally, as the nation's third largest oil-producing state, California must show climate leadership by reducing our dependence on fossil fuels and oil production. We cannot afford to burn all of the oil in California. We must leave it in the soil, and where better to start than fracking? Thank you for holding this meeting. We urge you to follow the science, listen to your constituents, and ban fracking.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Anthony Thomas, and members of the committee representing the California Independent Petroleum Association. Mr. Chairman, if you allow me within my time allotted, just one correction and two notes. The first correction is for the record, there's no groundwater resources on the west side of Kern County, where the bulk of percolation ponds are located. Again, for the record, there are no groundwater resources on the west side of the Kern County, where the bulk of the percolation ponds are located. To Senator Jackson's point in regard to water use for hydraulic fracturing members water use for hydraulic fracturing is 0.004% of the total usage of water in our state. 0.004%. I also would like to reinforce Dr. Boland's comment, his point about existing regulations. The existing regulations prohibit the discharge of well stimulation fluids to percolation ponds as well as sumps. To my comments, Mr. Chairman, according to the CCST study, the study found on page 35, the study found no release of hazardous hydraulic fracturing chemicals to surface waters in California and no direct impacts to fish or wildlife on page 35. On page 52, on page 52, we found no documented instances of hydraulic fracturing or acid stimulations directly causing groundwater contamination in the state of California. In June, the EPA, in a 1,000-page peer-reviewed report, easily the most extensive study on fracking and hydraulic fracturing in the United States, yet conducted and concluded. EPA clearly concluded hydraulic fracturing has not led to widespread systematic impacts to drinking water resources. According, Mr. Chairman, to the EPA, it is the most complete compilation of scientific data to date. I'll end my comments because of my time, Mr. Chairman, but I do appreciate your time as well as the members here of the committee.
Ask a clarifying question, Mr. Thomas. The first comment you made was that there's, just so I understand it, there's no, when you say there's no groundwater use in the western portion of Kern County?
Groundwater resources, Senator.
So tell me what you mean by that.
There are no groundwater resources on the west side of Kern County, meaning there are no...
So nobody in the west portion of Kern County uses groundwater? Is that what you're, I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
No, I'm not saying that. I said there are no groundwater resources impacting groundwater on the west side of Kern County, Senator.
Oh, so you're saying that there's no oil extraction impact on groundwater in the western portion of Kern County?
Yes, sir.
That we know of.
But are you presupposing that there's an oil impact on other groundwater resources in other parts of the state?
I didn't say that, Senator. I just said what I made a statement of.
I'm just trying to understand what you said.
And the only thing I'm saying, Senator, is that there are no impacts of groundwater resources on the west side of Kern County.
Okay.
All right, we're going to continue with public comment, and we're just going to note that we generally do not have banter between public comments and folks. I don't know how you do it over on this side of the legislature, but we don't do that in the assembly. Please continue.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committees. My name is Bob Poole, and I'm here representing the Western States Petroleum Association. What I would like to say is I think that comment on the science. I think the CCST did a great job. They had two general findings. The first one was they couldn't find any evidence of any problems with existing practices. Obviously, they caveated that finding by saying they'd like more information. That's the scientific process going forward. I'd like to compliment the agencies, in particular DOGGR and the Water Board, Department of Toxic Substances, ARB, for moving forward with continuing to look at the concerns of the public. But I think more important to that, I think what we need to understand is these are very complex issues. They do benefit from science. And we have a challenge here in California. We use almost 2 million barrels of oil every day in California. We import over 1 million barrels every day from overseas. And places where they don't have the same stringent environmental regulations we have here. And a lot of those places don't like us very much. So when we're talking about our energy policy, it seems very logical, very basic, that we should try to maximize our domestic production. It has a lot of benefits, environmental and economic, as we continue to develop alternative sources. But we're not going to stop using oil tomorrow. And the best thing we in California can do to address the environmental concerns is to continue this process in an open way and realize the more we can produce here onshore, the better we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Brianna Mordick. I'm a staff scientist with the Natural Resources Defense Council. This study is the first comprehensive statewide study of well simulation in California, and I think one of the things that's most notable about it, as we've heard today, is how little we know about this practice that's been happening in some form or another for over a century in California. You know, the data gaps are significant. The study includes a number of solid science-based recommendations, and we urge that those recommendations be implemented as soon as possible. SB 248 will take critical steps towards implementing some of those most important recommendations. One of the other most notable findings of the study is that the majority of impacts associated with hydraulic fracturing are caused by the indirect impacts of oil and gas production enabled by hydraulic fracturing. In other words, hydraulic fracturing is just one step in a long, complex chain of activities used to produce oil and gas. And every one of those activities has potential environmental and human health impacts. And the protections that we're affording to our communities are only as strong as the weakest link in that chain. And so we urge that the scientific research not stop here just at well stimulation, but looking at all of the potential environmental impacts from oil and gas production across the state and putting in place the protections that Californians need against those impacts. Thank you.
My name is Robert Gould. I'm president of the San Francisco Bay Area Chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility and also immediate past president of our national organization and represent thousands of physicians and other health professionals around the country in our opposition to the types of fracking operations that we're considering here in California. I don't want to take the time by reiterating the excellent comments that other people have made here, but we have great concerns about the potential health impacts that have been uncovered by the excellent report, as well as the need to consider those ongoing health impacts and environmental health impacts on communities, particularly in Southern California, because of the ongoing oil and gas operations. Concerns that we have that haven't really been fully addressed in the excellent review that you've all offered, including the burgeoning information on methane leaks, many from old operations, but which we can also consider from newer operations that really connect this issue with our ongoing concerns about climate change, particularly in a state that's taking, with Senator Pavley's leadership, with the possibility of SB 32, in this regard. One thing I'd want to underscore that I think we also need to consider is the fact that these reports, with all of the data gaps and all of the concerns that have been uncovered, have been released after the environmental impact review earlier this year. And I have a great deal of concern, as do members of my organization, that these findings and the potential health impacts and the data gaps get fully integrated into that review and not passing by as we develop ways to protect communities throughout California. Because of all the issues raised, we strongly support a moratorium towards banning fracking in our state, and I'd also want to support those who've called for health impact assessment or other health studies to be conducted by appropriate public health agencies, as opposed to agencies that have been more committed towards natural gas and oil exploration.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I thought you were asking a question. Okay.
Thank you means 2 minutes. Yeah, we've been kind of going, slipping a little bit, so please keep your comments closer to the 1 minute. Otherwise, I won't be able to make your press conference, so please.
I'm Martha Ann Blackman. Thank you for your participation on this committee, and thank you for the information that you've been able to provide to us through it and through the scientific studies. I just want to reiterate very quickly that water is a finite source. We're on this closed system. What we don't maintain and keep, we do not get back. I was surprised to hear how much produced water comes back up with the oil. That is totally distressing to me. Not only are we putting our beautiful, clean, finite water in there with nasty chemicals, we're pulling out the good water and screwing it up as well. This is a travesty, and I thank you that you're working on this for us. One more small comment is that NASA just released a study showing our ground water is dropping and dropping and dropping more and more and causing all kinds of problems with related to our infrastructure. And this is going to continue if we continue to do this kind of thing. Alternatives are definitely an answer. When we closed Rancho Seco in 1989, they said alternatives won't take care of it, but we have used alternatives to more than replace the power from that plant, and we can do the same with alternative energies in this day and time. Thank you for your presence.
Hi, my name's Carol Warren. I want to thank you for holding this hearing and especially for your very insightful questions. I moved here 2 years ago from West Virginia, and this feels like deja vu. 3 or 4 years ago, we were hearing this same kind of information, getting the same assurances. Oh, the pits won't leak. The frac fluids won't get out from the area where they're supposed to be. Any health impacts will be minimal. Well, I could tell you about 4 or 5 families that I know personally who can no longer live in their homes because the air or the water is too toxic for them to stay there. Nosebleeds, nausea, nervous disorders, rashes, you name it, people are experiencing it. And yes, science is all good, and I love science, and I'm totally in favor of getting all the scientific information you can. But I would also urge you, please, spend some time talking to some of the people who live near these sites, because they will tell you the truth about what's happening, and the science won't provide you with that information. Thank you very much.
Elizabeth Lesensky, Yellow Move On, Yolano Climate Action. Thank you very much for all this work that you've done and your research. And while you're doing this research and you're talking about regulations that won't go into effect for 3 more years, the damage is still happening. We're still having groundwater being contaminated. We still have poor air quality. We still have seismic issues. So we're dithering, and the time is running out. We need to do something, and we really do need to ban fracking. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Thornton, and I'm here representing my daughter, my granddaughter, and my great-granddaughter, all California residents. I was thinking earlier, what if we had been playing a drinking game where we had to take a drink, every time somebody said data gap, knowledge gap, we don't know, and I guess now we'd have to add, not that we know of. You know, there's so much unknown about this, and that seems to me to be the basic message of the report. And there's a reason why it's not known. And it just seems kind of silly to me that we would go forward with these kinds of activities knowing that there is so much about them that we don't know. And you're in a position to do something about that, and I hope you will. We really do need a moratorium on this activity until we know enough about it to make sure that it's safe for my kids and my grandkid and my great-grandkids and yours too. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue Chang. I'm the Pollution Prevention Director at the Center for Environmental Health. CEH is a national nonprofit organization headquartered in Oakland, California, with a mission to protect the public from exposure to toxic chemicals. First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Pavley in calling for this joint hearing. It's shocking that the oil and gas industry has been allowed to operate for so long with virtually no oversight or attention being paid to the impacts their operations have on public health. CEH co-authored 2 peer-reviewed studies last year, both of which point to signs of harm from fracking and oil and gas development. One study was the first to document air pollution in several locations around the U.S. near fracking operations, in some cases showing higher levels of cancer-causing chemicals in the air than allowed under government clean air standards. The second study highlighted threats to young children and pregnant women who live near fracking sites, including higher risks of birth defects, infertility, miscarriage, impaired fetal growth, low birth weight, among other health problems. Here in California, CEH has already found that fracking wastewater from Seneca Resources contains levels of naphthalene, benzene, and ethylbenzene, all substances listed in the state as known to cause cancer and or serious reproductive health problems, far in excess of Prop 65 safety standards. For example, some of the wastewater injected into a potential source of drinking water by Seneca contains more than 2,000 times more benzene than allowed under Prop 65. The CCST report points out that there are many aspects of fracking and other oil and gas development processes that pose potential serious health risks to human health and the environment. The repeated reference in the CCST report of significant data gaps is cause for concerns when the authors state that they have, quote, found no evidence of various problems related to fracking. They also repeatedly note that there are significant data gaps. In other words, the report found no evidence of certain problems because essentially no one has looked for the evidence. So we need to turn around the notion that the oil and gas industry's operations should be assumed safe and that the public should bear the burden of proof to demonstrate that fracking is harming our health and our environment. Public health is about preventing harm. The science is behind and needs to catch up to the rapid pace of expansion of this industry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Annie Sarter. I'm with the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments. My colleague Barbara Sattler, who's a professor in the nursing school at University of San Francisco, couldn't be here. So these are comments from the both of us. There's been some emphasis on the unique approaches to gas and oil extraction that are being applied in California. Some have said that the differences are significant enough that we need a set of comprehensive studies to develop state-based risk assessment. Good comprehensive studies take years to implement and are extremely costly. So implementing such a study would be fine as long as we have a moratorium on any new fracking while we await the results. Barbara and I recently took a tour of oil and gas fields in Bakersfield, and we would not have needed a study to see that we have a problem indeed. One particularly important thing to note was vapors emitting from percolation pits that we talked so much about today. We actually could see vapors as they came up in waves from the pits. There's a searing stench from the volatile organic compounds that had us all choking. California's Central Valley already hosts the worst air pollution in the country, and we have decided by default that it's acceptable to add to their air inferiority. This is reprehensible. It's time to make sure that everyone is being protected, including and especially our most vulnerable populations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Copeland. I think we should ban fracking until we get all the toxic chemicals, which we don't even know about the toxic effects to humans and wildlife, out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Frances Burke from YOLO Move On, and I just would like to say I do support a ban on fracking. I think there's too many unknowns and the risk is too great. And the one point I think needs to be brought out is that domestically produced oil is not necessarily used domestically. It all goes onto the world market. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Kyle Jones with Sierra Club, California. I'd like to thank the committees today for having this hearing. And just like to reiterate our support for moratorium on fracking. While we do have data gaps, I think that does lead us to the conclusion that we can't be sure that this is safe and it needs to stop. We also need to address some of the more damaging impacts of traditional oil extraction, including cyclic steam injection, which produces large amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. We need to deal with the health impacts on communities by looking at creating a setback between oil production and where people are actually living. We need to prevent pathways to groundwater contamination by ending oil sump practices, and also really work on our underground injection program to ensure that it complies with the Safe Drinking Water Act to prevent further illegal injections of wastewater into protected aquifers, and to ensure that monitoring is in place so that there's no contamination spread to actual protected aquifers that could be used beneficially. Thank you.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Blake Kopshow. I'm here because I'm deeply concerned about the impacts of fracking and other dangerous oil and gas development on our air, health, water, and environment. I urge you to protect Californians by banning fracking and also banning oil and gas development near homes, schools, hospitals, and other places where people will be exposed to dangerous air pollutants. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That ends the joint informational hearing with the Senate and Assembly Natural Resources Committees. Thank you so much.